ASHTAR QFS launch comes after this 2025-2026 alert. I am ASHTAR, and I extend my presence to you, choosing to commune in this precise moment, at this crucial juncture of your collective journey. We find ourselves amidst these pivotal junctures, these profound turning points where the very fabric of your world appears to be shifting, propelling forward in astonishing, sudden leaps and bounds. In such times, the intuitive wisdom residing within your hearts deeply senses that the unfolding panorama of events transcends the scope of any singular, fragmented headline. It is far more significant than the agenda of any individual, isolated leader, no matter how prominent, and it certainly exceeds any superficial, isolated explanation that might be conveniently condensed into a concise paragraph and then presented to the unsuspecting public as if it were a truly comprehensive and exhaustive account. Because what you are truly witnessing in your current now is but the visible punctuation, the stark and undeniable period at the culmination of a much longer, intricate sentence. This grand narrative has been meticulously penned in silence over countless cycles, unfolding within hallowed halls you are not privy to, in clandestine chambers you cannot access, and through unseen corridors that stretch beyond your immediate perception. And yet, beloved ones, your inherent inner knowing has always been profoundly aware that such intricate corridors and hidden mechanisms exist. You have always intuited that the visible layer, the narrative presented to the masses, is a carefully shaped and artfully constructed facade, deliberately chosen for its potent effect, strategically selected for the opportune moment, and precisely calculated for the specific reaction it will elicit within the collective mind of humanity. We often refer to what you might perceive as the film layer, and we find it pertinent to discuss it once more at this time. We speak of it not as a form of mere entertainment, nor as a gesture of mockery, and certainly not with contempt. Rather, we address it as a precise mechanism, a sophisticated apparatus by which the vast expanse of mass perception is artfully guided and subtly steered. For when any civilization begins to reach a critical threshold, a point where the inherent truth of reality starts to exert immense pressure against the entrenched walls of old agreements and established paradigms, the controllers who benefit from these outdated agreements do not simply withdraw gracefully and applaud the advent of change. Instead, they commence a meticulous choreography. They begin to orchestrate elaborate arrangements, to cast the ensemble of players, and to strategically place carefully curated symbols and statements into the collective field of awareness. Their objective is clear: to ensure that the populace looks precisely where it is directed to look, feels exactly what it is directed to feel, and engages in discussions prompted by the very cues it is directed to discuss. All the while, the deeper, more profound movements and transformations continue to unfold with far less public resistance and scrutiny. And so, you're currently observing a pivotal moment where a first breach in the old system is becoming kinetically active, manifesting in tangible reality. You are witnessing the sustained pressure of revelation gradually mature and transmute into the compelling pressure of decisive action. We urge you to perceive this sequence of events as precisely theta-coherent, interconnected sequence, because a sequence alone possesses the profound teaching capacity that a singular, isolated event can never fully impart. When viewed from a higher perspective, the sequence reveals itself to be remarkably simple initially. A subtle hint is artfully given then, a possibility previously considered taboo or unmentionable is spoken aloud. A boundary that was once deemed entirely beyond discussion suddenly becomes a topic of open discourse, and in that instant, the very atmosphere shifts. The fundamental structure of societal permission changes, and the inner posture, the collective readiness of the public, undergoes a significant transformation. From that pivotal point onward, the entrenched old system rarely responds with just one move. Instead, it unleashes a carefully coordinated series of countermoves. Each of these countermoves is meticulously designed to reclaim absolute control over public attention, to reassert its authority over the interpretation of events, and to ultimately regain command over what people are led to believe is the root cause of the phenomena they are witnessing. What frequently manifests on your screens as a dramatic attack, a forceful public statement, a dire promise of severe consequences, or an urgent, ominous warning, is often nothing more than the final, visible layer of a meticulously crafted Pachygia strategic maneuver that was assembled and prepared long before the specific day of its public announcement. Crucially, within such a strategically assembled package, multiple, distinct audiences are simultaneously being addressed with layered messages. The general public represents one such audience. The shadowy, hidden institutions constitute another. Rival factions operating within those very institutions form yet another. Foreign players on the global stage are a separate audience entirely, and even the invisible observers, those non-physical entities who have subtly influenced human leadership for extended periods, also comprise a distinct audience. Therefore, a single public act can, and often does, serve 5 distinct purposes concurrently. This multifaceted nature is precisely why your discerning mind often senses that something is off when you attempt to reduce complex events to a single, simplistic motive. We would like to gently remind you of a profound truth that the ancients deeply understood, though they articulated it in different linguistic frameworks. Timing, in its essence, represents the oldest and most potent form of power. They gazed upon the celestial heavens not merely for their inherent beauty, but for the precise windows of opportunity they revealed. They meticulously measured ages and epochs, interpreting the sky itself as an immense, intricate clock that could be read with profound accuracy by those who possessed the specialized training and esoteric knowledge to decipher its rhythms. And when an era reached its cosmic turning point, its cyclical culmination, it was universally regarded as a profound authorization for specific kinds of fundamental restructuring, because when the collective consciousness is already stirred and influenced by grand cosmic turning, the reorganization of human systems becomes significantly easier to accomplish without encountering unified, widespread resistance. So, when you encounter discussions about sextuple alignments, when you hear whispered tales of celestial windows where multiple cosmic bodies precisely position themselves in a profound pattern that eerily resembles a key gracefully turning in a lock, understand this: those who meticulously plan in secret have always cherished and expertly utilized the opportune cover provided by such celestial windows. This is because during these times, the human psyche becomes inherently more sensitive and receptive. The dream field becomes remarkably more active and vivid. The emotional atmosphere of the planet becomes noticeably more malleable and impressionable, and choices that previously seemed utterly unthinkable begin to appear as inevitable, even logical. We convey this information with utmost gentleness, for you are in the crucial process of learning to discern and separate the sacred aspects of existence from those elements that are cynically exploited. And the sacred, in its truest form, encompasses the fundamental reality that your cosmos operates in grand, intricate cycles, and that these very cycles inherently create powerful openings for accelerated evolution and transformation. Conversely, exploitation is precisely what occurs when those profound openings are co-opted and manipulated to steer the population not toward clarity and understanding, but toward pervasive confusion, not toward unity and cohesion, but toward divisive fragmentation, and not toward sober discernment, but toward obsessive preoccupation. That is why you have repeatedly observed the deliberate strategic deployment of volume without clarity. For when a multitude of voices simultaneously speak, each clamoring for absolute certainty and proclaiming their exclusive truth, the collective consciousness inevitably fragments into myriad tribes. This resulting fragmentation then effectively becomes the impenetrable shield behind which the deeper, more clandestine work of the corridors proceeds unimpeded. A fragmented public, by its very nature, finds itself endlessly spending its vital energy arguing over superficialities and surface appearances. You possess ancient narratives that vividly recount a civilization suddenly fractured and divided by myriad languages. And though many might dismiss such stories as mere myth, their underlying mechanism is undeniably real and powerfully operative in your current era as well. A veritable flood of conflicting explanations and contradictory narratives can indeed splinter communities into 100 disparate camps, with each camp absolutely certain that every other camp is utterly blind or intentionally misguided. And while these various camps are fiercely engaged in their internecine struggles, the deeper, more profound reorganizations and transformations are quietly occurring with significantly less friction and opposition. Therefore, we extend an invitation to you: become truly wise in this pivotal moment. Become wise enough to keenly notice when information is presented to you primarily with the intention of provoking an emotional reaction. Become astute enough to discern when a particular theme is relentlessly repeated to you because it is deliberately intended to become the singular, overarching lens through which you interpret the entire world. Become perceptive enough to recognize when the powerful emotion of outrage is being skillfully employed as a leash, a tool to control and direct your collective attention. Now, we also speak to you of a much grander arc, one that extends far beyond the immediate events unfolding before you. This is because your current chapter, with all its immediate drama, is itself intricately nested within a vastly longer timeline of cosmic stewardship. And those benevolent beings who hail from farther reaches of the cosmos have already articulated this grand design, sometimes using the language of protected zones, at other times employing terms like sanctuary cities, and occasionally referring to future points of diplomacy and initial global summits. And though we do not refer to these sacred places by the precise names you may have given them, we can affirm that there are specific regions within your western continent, majestic regions nestled within your mountain ranges, and vibrant regions within your sacred red rock vortex lands that are currently undergoing profound preparation. These are being readied not simply as mere hideaways or safe havens, but as living prototypes for an emergent future culture, a new paradigm of human civilization. This meticulous preparation encompasses education in its broadest sense, the cultivation of refined ethics, advanced diplomacy, the flourishing of art, and the deliberate reintroduction of beauty as a fundamental, stabilizing force for the human heart and spirit. You may hear whispers that your 2026 cycle holds a unique motif of profound protection, a special energetic signature. And you may learn that the public emergence of certain prototypes, these nascent cultural models, is slated to occur later, closer to the significant turning points of your 2027 and 2028 cycles. Furthermore, you may perceive indications that your world begins to function as a crucial crossroads, a convergence point for various cosmic influences, around mid-2030, and is destined to evolve into a full-fledged council world in the early 2040s. Whether you choose to interpret these as literal, precise timelines, or as symbolic, guiding arcs, their utility remains profoundly the same. They serve to educate and reorient the human mind, encouraging it to cease believing that every fleeting headline constitutes the complete and entire story. Instead, they foster the understanding that every headline is but a single scene, a fleeting moment, within a much larger, more intricate and deliberate unfolding. Within this grander, overarching unfolding, there's also a specifically regulated window of opportunity, described by some as commencing in your 2025 cycle and extending gracefully into the mid-2040s. This is a crucial window of intensive stewardship and profound rehabilitation for those regions that have been tragically scarred and exploited by conflict. It marks a period where regulation will significantly increase, where access will be meticulously managed and controlled, where destabilization tactics will finally lose their perverse reward, and where the long-term, overarching goal is not perpetual escalation of conflict, but rather the deliberate and harmonious reintroduction of lawful cosmic order into areas that were once cynically utilized as mere squares on a global chessboard for hidden, clandestine games. When you manage to embrace and hold this expansive, wider arc in your consciousness, your heart inevitably finds a deep and abiding peace. This is because it perceives a clear direction instead of bewildering chaos, a profound purpose instead of random chance, and it becomes significantly easier to maintain a compassionate stance while simultaneously remaining keenly discerning. Now, beloved ones, because you specifically inquired, we will delve into the deepest, most intricate mechanism by which the public layer of reality is meticulously kept stable. This stability often necessitates moments of high punctuation, a dramatic, impactful act, a clear and unequivocal statement, a compelling show of force, or an undeniable demonstration of certainty. Such certainty acts as a powerful corral, gathering and focusing attention, and attention, as you know, is the primary currency of the film layer of reality. Yet, beneath these highly visible, public punctuations, there is often a quieter, more profound action already well underway. This might manifest as a reorganization of custody over crucial assets, the sealing off of vital routes, the subtle removal of a key asset that would otherwise serve as powerful leverage for future countermoves, or the strategic repositioning of individuals who held the keys to hidden systemic operations. This intricate, underlying work is precisely why a public act can sometimes appear to arrive late, because, in many instances, it is revealed only after the deeper, more foundational work has already significantly advanced. You see, the public is frequently provided with a simple, easily digestible container word-to-word that is effortless to repeat, simple to fear, and convenient to point at. That singular container word then effectively becomes the blinding torch, for it grows large enough in the collective consciousness to encompass and hold many complex realities at once, thereby obscuring the true underlying mechanisms. You possess ancient precedents for this very phenomenon as well, where a single, ominous phrase could readily justify an invasion, where a solitary sign in the sky could be interpreted as a divine mandate, or where a lone label placed over a stone could divert the collective mind towards stories of sacrifice, even while the structure itself was, in fact, an intricate vector for time measurement and celestial navigation. And your world continues to employ this very method in the present era, a dramatic, emotionally charged label for public consumption, while the functional corridor, the true operational pathway, remains quietly and effectively intact beneath the surface. So, we invite you to perceive the first breach as that precise moment when the previously unsaid became sayable point, where the public began to tolerate a theme or concept that would previously have been instantly ridiculed or dismissed. And once this critical threshold of tolerance is achieved, the entire, intricate architecture of secrecy itself begins to undergo a profound transformation. This is because secrecy fundamentally thrives on social enforcement. It derives its power from widespread mockery and from the swift punishment of curiosity. And when those mechanisms of punishment begin to fail, secrecy is compelled to evolve. It adapts by deliberately flooding the collective field of awareness with a torrent of competing narratives, meticulously crafting elaborate story trails, presenting archetypal heroes and villains in ways that keep the public perpetually engaged and distracted, and deftly overlaying the true, strategic objectives beneath a publicly acceptable explanation, one that can be easily repeated and debated at dinner tables around the world. And why are you specifically the starseeds and light workers? It is because your hearts are exquisitely sensitive and your minds are profoundly awake and receptive. We implore you to adopt a higher, more centered posture in this significant C-zona posture of calm, detached observation combined with gentle, yet penetrating clarity. Cultivate a posture that keenly discerns how swiftly people are guided towards identity cues, outrage cues, denial cues, mockery cues, and even worship cues, all while the deeper, more significant movements proceed largely unnoticed beneath the surface. And maintain a posture that remains inherently kind, even while it remains sharply discerning, because kindness, in its truest essence, is not a weakness, it is a profound form of mastery. And discernment is not born of cynicism, it is the very embodiment of wisdom. You're actively learning to observe and understand timing. And timing here is quite simply everything. You are learning to acutely notice when a disclosure cue arises and a crisis swiftly follows, when a crisis emerges and a decisive act subsequently occurs, and when that decisive act appears to definitively close one chapter, while simultaneously and silently opening the next. And you will observe that this intricate pattern repeats itself consistently until the collective consciousness becomes fully capable of holding complex truths without feeling the immediate need to transform them into a destructive war between neighbors, friends, or even within oneself. So we say to you, allow your precious attention to rest primarily on the underlying mechanism instead of being solely captivated by the personalities involved. Let your mind become highly skilled at perceiving the overarching sequence of events instead of being mesmerized by the fleeting spectacle. Allow your heart to remain wide open, expansive in its compassion, while your discernment remains exquisitely sharp and unclouded. And permit this initial session to settle deeply within you as the profound recognition that the visible layer of reality is deliberately shaped. The timing of events is meticulously chosen. The creation of specific cues is entirely deliberate, and the deeper story of humanity possesses an arc far longer and more intricate than any news cycle could ever hope to reveal. And as we continue, we will gently guide you into the second movement of this transmission. We will delve into the corridors that lie beneath the visible map, exploring the intricate ways nodes are chosen, routes are sealed, and pathways are meticulously managed. You will come to understand how what appears to be a local event may, in truth, be a strategic regional chess move within a much grander, more expansive design. And now, beloved ones, as we transition from the concept of the first breach and the way it becomes kinetically manifest in your visible world, we shall pass into the deeper realities that lie beneath the map you have been conditioned to trust implicitly. For a nation is far more than a mere flag or a televised face you see on your screens. And a region encompasses far more complexity than a simple, inked borderline drawn on a conventional map. Indeed, in the deeper, more intricate architecture of the world, certain lands are treated not merely as geographical locations, but as crucial nodes. And these nodes are precisely defined by their unique geology, by the availability and flow of water, by the presence of significant mountain ranges, by ancient, pre-existing paths and energy lines, by vital resource lines, by historical paths of compliance or resistance, by the inherent ease with which movement can be hidden or facilitated, and by the subtle, interconnected ways one place naturally links to others through a network of corridors that do not overtly announce themselves to the untrained eye. And when a particular node exists in a state of calm and stability, the public narrative, the surface story, also remains calm. But when a node becomes contested, when its strategic importance is actively challenged, the public story inevitably becomes noisy and chaotic. This noise is, in fact, the deliberate camouflage, the strategic diversion that allows the deeper, more significant work to continue moving forward, largely unseen and unchallenged. There are multiple layers to this corridor work, and we speak of this with great care and precision. For the human mind, in its desire for simplicity, often loves to collapse everything into a single, sensational rumor. And the human heart, in its empathy, often loves to make everything intensely personal. However, the map of corridors is fundamentally structural. It is about architecture and design, and structure inherently explains far more about the mechanics of power than individual personalities or their dramas ever will. Because within this intricate map of corridors, there exist profound infrastructures, some of which were built by human hands through hidden agreements and clandestine funding. These include vast networks of tunnels that function as vital arteries for movement, for the secure storage of sensitive materials, and for the hidden command and control of operations. There are critical intersections that serve as sophisticated transfer points. And there are even older anomalies, ancient passage zones that are inextricably woven into the very geology of the Earth itself, often predating recorded human history. In your more recent disclosures and materials, you have already encountered the language describing a master gate, a governing interface situated in the Persian region. This strategic nexus exerts a profound influence over a wider Middle Eastern field. You have seen it implicitly linked to a significant coastal Iraqi city, and it has been described as a crucial articulation point for a broader, interconnected web that touches a peninsular state renowned for its immense gas wealth. This web also extends to encompass a narrow sea situated between the African and Arabian land masses, a region where global trade routes and critical naval control converge. These are not merely random historical positionings, they are precisely the kinds of strategic placements that an intricate corridor map would meticulously choose. This is because corridors inherently prefer junctions, points of convergence, and junctions, in turn, naturally prefer places where multiple systems, be they geological, energetic, or geopolitical, seamlessly meet and intertwine. You have also encountered the language of triangulation, and this concept, beloved ones, is profoundly ancient. Long before the advent of sophisticated satellites and advanced drones, the master builders of corridors understood a fundamental truth: 3 distinct points invariably create a powerful field. 3 points can forge an unbreakable lock, and 3 points define a stable geometry that can be both held and maintained over vast periods. In your current materials, there is a described triad of sacred mountains, one situated in the holy city where countless prayers have ascended for ages, another position along a significant coastal range where ancient, profound encounters are said to have occurred, and a third located in the northern highlands, a place long mentioned in revered ancient texts. These 3 points once formed a powerful triangulation, a sacred alignment that was later subtly redirected and repurposed to serve the overarching Persian gate system. And even if you choose to perceive this as merely symbolic, the underlying mechanism remains undeniably clear. When an older, powerful alignment serves a specific purpose, various factions will inevitably attempt to hijack it, to co-opt its energy, and to redirect its inherent power to serve an entirely different agenda. This is precisely why you intuitively feel that certain regions of your world carry a repeated, persistent pressure, because the underlying corridor map is actively being rewoven and reconfigured. And when one crucial thread in this intricate web is pulled, many interconnected knots inevitably tighten simultaneously across the entire structure. And so, when it is publicly announced that specific targets are facilities, bases, and leadership nodes, the deeper corridor map translates that information into a distinct set of operational objectives. These targets become critical access points, vital tunnel intersections, deep storage areas, command corridors, essential transfer shafts, securely sealed chambers, and the strategic removal of mechanisms that grant leverage and control. It is in this crucial translation that you begin to grasp why a public action might appear to be purely local in scope, while its true strategic intent is, in fact, regional or even global. This is because the closure of a single, seemingly minor corridor can fundamentally alter movement options and strategic pathways across an entire, vast web of interconnected systems. A single denial operation can force a critical detour that inadvertently exposes other, previously hidden nodes. And a single, decisive change of custody can initiate the collapse of an entire chain of dependency that has been meticulously kept secret for decades. This intricate interplay is also why you frequently observe discussions around unusual energetic signatures accompanying these pivotal moments, reports of time anomalies, sudden and inexplicable narrative shifts in the media, unexpected permission to openly discuss topics that were once vehemently mocked and ridiculed, and even terrestrial disturbances interpreted as collateral signs of significant subsurface work. Because when the deep corridors beneath the Earth move or altered, the surface inevitably registers and feels it. And when deep, ancient vaults are disturbed or transformed, the Earth itself records the change. And those discerning observers who keenly watch patterns inevitably begin to notice these subtle yet significant shifts. You possess in your oldest records a perfect, profound mirror of this very principle. For the ancients constructed structures that were more than mere monuments. They were, in essence, intricate vectors, openings precisely aligned to specific cosmic directions, grand avenues deliberately cut through the landscape as intentional approach lines, and stones meticulously placed as markers that created a defined entry corridor. Even the labels carefully placed over those stones could serve as a form of sophisticated disinformation, skillfully guiding the public mind toward captivating stories of sacrifice, while the true underlying function of a structure was, in fact, precise timing, celestial measurement, and the expert management of arrivals or departures. And this identical principle remains profoundly alive and operative in your current era. The public label is often meticulously chosen for its maximum emotional impact and psychological effect, while the functional corridor, the true pathway of operation, remains silently and effectively intact, hidden from public view. And those who construct and manage these corridors delight in creating dramatic, evocative names for the surface narrative, because such dramatic names keep the collective mind endlessly circling around the wrong fire, perpetually distracted from the true lines of movement and power. Your oldest descent stories also vividly mirror this, describing a fortified, circular domain accessed through a majestic mountain by hidden, spiral paths. These narratives speak of passing through secret doors and guarded transitions, where passage occurs only through explicit authorization and adherence to specific formulas. Even the tunnel itself is often described as layered, with different levels serving distinct purposes: movement on one level, complex operations on another, and containment on yet another. And you can readily perceive, within this rich, mythic language, the precise model for modern subsurface architecture: multiple intricate layers, serving multiple distinct purposes, with controlled transitions, controlled knowledge, and rigidly controlled access at every point. Likewise, There are ancient references to corridor markers, sometimes described as stones of splendor strategically placed as beacons along an approach. The image is beautifully simple and evocative along a path of significant importance. Those who control that path deliberately place markers that mean absolutely nothing to outsiders, but convey everything to those who possess the intrinsic corridor code. And when you translate this ancient wisdom to your present reality, you see it manifesting in diverse forms: sophisticated signaling systems, precise orientation points, cleverly hidden relays, and even elaborate cultural distractions strategically placed along public thoroughfares to keep attention diverted away from the true lines of movement and power. There are also ancient containment archetypes narratives where a critical passage between mountains is hermetically sealed with powerful metals and molten material, a mythic description of advanced corridor denial. And this, too, serves as a powerful mirror for your current era. For when a route becomes too dangerous to leave open, those who govern it. The original text ends abruptly here, so I will maintain that abrupt ending. The chosen paths of influence invariably lead to their eventual closure. This act of sealing off crucial access points is, more often than not, cleverly disguised as something altogether different, ensuring that the collective public consciousness remains perpetually unaware of which metaphorical doors truly hold the keys to power and significance. Trade routes throughout history eloquently reflect this fundamental truth for millennia. The rivers flowing to the coast served as indispensable lifelines that unequivocally determined which civilizations prospered and which faded. In the same vein, your modern-day corridors encompassing transportation networks, vital fuel arteries, and the intricate conduits of data inherently wield this identical, profound influence. Consequently, when a crisis is meticulously orchestrated, it frequently functions as both legal and emotional subterfuge, providing convenient cover to deliberately reroute those essential veins of power and resource. Furthermore, within the more recently revealed map of these corridors, beloved ones, there's a distinct and deliberate naming of specific geographical landmarks situated in the rugged Persian highlands. These include an immense, perpetually snow-capped peak that majestically ascends like an ancient sentinel, an imposing northern mountain fortress from antiquity once famously referred to as the Eagle's Nest, and various other critical nodes meticulously described as interfaces. These deliberate designations are intended to offer you tangible geographic anchors, allowing your discernment to firmly rest upon a concrete map rather than being adrift in a disorienting fog of uncertainty. You will also perceive the striking mirroring of this very same corridor logic unfolding across your western continent. Here, specific mention is made of a venerable mountain city, nestled intimately against a formidable, great stone spine, strategically positioned near meticulously preserved archives. These archives are reputedly capable of bridging advanced technologies with complex dimensional structures. The inherent value of this mirroring is profoundly significant. It unequivocally demonstrates that the underlying logic of these corridors is not confined to any single locale, but is, in fact, a pervasive global phenomenon. It reveals that the unfolding narrative is never merely a singular, isolated event. Rather, it is always a complex strategic board featuring multiple interconnected squares, with numerous pieces simultaneously being repositioned and rearranged. Therefore, we extend an earnest invitation for you to consciously pose corridor questions each and every time a captivating headline attempts to mesmerize or lull you into acceptance with a singular, seemingly definitive explanation. These corridor questions are deceptively simple, yet immensely powerful. What crucial assets or systems had to be secured before this announcement was made public? What vital information or access points had to be sealed before this declaration was officially issued? What inconvenient truths or challenging realities had to be unequivocally denied before this situation became widely known? What essential elements or strategic pieces had to be moved before this issue was dramatically framed as an urgent crisis? And, crucially, what foundational routes or critical resources had to be deliberately redirected so that any potential countermove would inevitably arrive too late to be effective? By consistently engaging with and asking these penetrating questions, you will instinctively begin to perceive the deeper, underlying architecture of events without the exhaustive need to chase down every fleeting rumor that drifts across the information landscape. This is because your inner peace is effectively preserved through astute pattern recognition, and your mental clarity is rigorously maintained by developing structural sight, the ability to see the framework beneath the surface. As this profound understanding steadily takes root within you, you will discover that the metaphorical corridor map naturally and seamlessly guides you towards the subsequent phase of our ongoing transmission. For once you truly perceive the existence and function of these corridors, you inherently begin to sense and understand the concept of custody. And once you keenly feel the presence of custody, you commence to grasp the profound reasons why certain code words are deliberately chosen, why particular terms are elevated to become illuminating torches for the masses, why hidden objectives are so cleverly concealed within seemingly simple labels, and why the true, overarching war so often devolves into an intricate contest for keys, for access, and for ultimate control over what is permitted to pass through the intricate gates of your world. And now, beloved ones, as your burgeoning awareness progressively recognizes the intricate network of corridors hidden beneath the superficial map, you naturally begin to perceive the next, deeper layer of reality. This is because corridors are never maintained merely for their own inherent sake. Corridors are strategically held and controlled by what they are designed to protect, by the invaluable assets they are engineered to carry, by the profound secrets they are meant to conceal, and by the critical elements they rigorously keep under their custody. So, when you encounter a public narrative that arrives encapsulated within a single, frightening, and deliberately crafted container word, and subsequently observe with what astonishing speed that very word transforms into the blazing torch wielded by the agitated crowd, you are, in essence, witnessing a very ancient and highly effective method of societal steering. This method has been expertly employed across countless ages precisely because a single, potent word possesses the capacity to encapsulate 1,000 potential realities while simultaneously keeping the single, inconvenient true reality unnamed and unacknowledged. Furthermore, such a singular word can be relentlessly repeated and amplified until it becomes the sole permissible lens through which the entire population is allowed to interpret the unfolding event. You have undoubtedly witnessed this phenomenon throughout your own contemporary era, with words meticulously designed to generate immediate, unquestioning conclusions, words crafted to elicit instant agreement or, conversely, instant division, and words engineered to compress immense complexity into a deceptively simple, easily digestible form. In the ongoing war of corridors, the most devastatingly useful words are invariably those that are easy to fear, effortlessly repeatable, and readily usable as justification. This is because justification serves as the critical psychological lubricant that allows deeper, often hidden actions to proceed unhindered without the uncomfortable intrusion of questions that would otherwise inevitably expose their true, underlying purpose. And so, we unequivocally state to you that language laundering represents one of the primary and most insidious instruments of custody. For when a crucial term is successfully laundered, it becomes sufficiently sanitized and innocuous for widespread public consumption. And once it achieves this level of public acceptability, it becomes powerful enough to guide and influence millions, all while the deeper, true objective remains perfectly shielded by a carefully constructed veil of presumed understanding and consensus. It is in this context that you begin to grasp why one astute observer might accurately describe an event as theater, while another, equally valid observer, might truthfully label it as war. Both can articulate a profound truth from their respective vantage points, because the visible act presented to the public may be selectively chosen for its dramatic effect, while the hidden act is precisely selected for its strategic objective. And that underlying objective is frequently not conquest, nor retribution, nor even the superficial satisfaction of a public narrative. Instead, it is often the systematic reorganization of custody, the calculated removal of critical leverage, and a strategic sealing off of a set of crucial options that would otherwise be available later as potent bargaining chips within the wider, intricate sequence of events you are currently experiencing. Beloved ones, within this hidden architecture, leverage is the ultimate currency. And leverage can manifest in countless forms. Leverage can be a strategically controlled corridor. Leverage can be a hidden archive of invaluable information. Leverage can be a complex chain of unbreakable oaths. Leverage can be a breakthrough technology. Leverage can be an esoteric object meticulously safeguarded in a deep, inaccessible place. Or leverage can even be a specific set of codes that unlock an entire system. When this critical leverage is removed, the entire strategic map undergoes a profound and irreversible transformation, even if the public remains convinced that they have merely witnessed a single, isolated dramatic scene. This is precisely why your most ancient and mythic layers of narrative speak so compellingly of unusual custody cargoes of enigmatic objects not born of your Earth, meticulously held as ultimate keys of sacred relics treated as crucial control nodes within a larger system, and of ancient interfaces revered as fundamental articulations of governance. And whether an individual reader chooses to interpret such claims as strictly literal or deeply symbolic, the functional point remains unequivocally the same hidden systems are indeed held in custody. And this custody is meticulously protected by intricate layers of disinformation. Consequently, when custody fundamentally changes hands, the public invariably receives a simplified, easily digestible explanation that serves to keep the mind satisfied, while the deeper, true strategic board is simultaneously being fundamentally redefined. There's also a recurring pattern. You may have recognized a pattern that manifests repeatedly in the annals of secret conflicts. This is the phenomenon where, when a chain of custody senses that its capture is imminent, a swift and decisive choice is made to destroy the asset rather than surrender it. This drastic action is not undertaken out of conventional courage or honor, rather. It stems from a cold, strategic understanding that exposure represents a far greater and more existential threat to the old architecture than the actual loss itself. The logic is chillingly simple. A loss, no matter how significant, can eventually be rebuilt or replaced, whereas exposure irrevocably alters the collective's fundamental relationship to its perceived reality, potentially dismantling the entire structure of control. So, we now speak to you of the pivotal layer of Guardians because this layer is the very mechanism through which custody successfully persists across many centuries. You possess ancient models for this system that are far more accurate and intricate than most realize. For there exist detailed records of inner chambers so profoundly restricted that they were revered as the very heart of the temple chambers where esoteric sky letters were carefully stored, where critical trajectories and precise timings were meticulously kept, where command keys that dictated passage and permission were vigilantly guarded, and where the entire order of operations could be fundamentally altered by whoever possessed the sacred inner tablets, the secret inner maps, or the hidden inner codes. Within these ancient models, there is even the compelling story of a successful intrusion, an audacious intruder who managed to penetrate the most restricted room and seize the coveted command items. And instantly, the entire control structure began to waver and sway precariously. Because control is never merely physical at its core, control is profoundly informational. And those who hold the informational keys possess the inherent capacity to direct and reshape what is possible within a given system. Therefore, when you thoughtfully translate this profound principle to your current era, you begin to understand why so many visible conflicts behave as if their primary objective is mere territorial acquisition, while the deeper, true contest is fundamentally about command access, about the custody of vital data, and ultimately, about who holds the master permissions for the intricate systems that possess the power to shape the movement of assets, the trajectory of narratives, and the ultimate unfolding of outcomes. It is also why you observe repeated emphasis on unnamed special capabilities, not because these capabilities must be imaginary, but because the very act of naming them collapses the carefully constructed compartments upon which the old architecture was meticulously built and protected. Consequently, the general public receives a simplified narrative that can be easily repeated and widely disseminated, while the deeper, more powerful toolkit remains securely hidden behind a curtain. Simultaneously, those who are awake and aware are implicitly invited to focus their attention on the underlying function rather than the superficial paraphernalia, because true function is the enduring essence that survives every subsequent rebranding or superficial alteration. Beloved ones, we also invite you to keenly observe how custody becomes hereditary without ever being explicitly called inheritance. This is because the crucial layer of Guardians frequently travels through intricate webs of oaths and carefully maintained bloodlines, through the sacred passing of secrets from a seasoned teacher to a meticulously chosen heir, from an elder to a designated son, from an experienced mentor to a promising initiate, and from one intricate program to another. In this profound manner, the secret itself becomes self-replicating and self-perpetuating, for the secret is protected not merely by physical walls, but more powerfully by a deeply ingrained identity. And that identity itself becomes the unbreakable chain that ensures the guardian's unwavering loyalty. That is precisely why you perceive the recurring pattern of Master of Secrets and Guardian of Secrets emerging in ancient records, for the very title itself serves to reveal the underlying architecture of control. The secret is not just content, it is a vital role. The secret is a strategic position. The secret is a restricted room. The secret is a guarded gate. The secret is a complex permission structure. And those who are entrusted with its protection are meticulously trained to believe that their very survival and purpose depend upon it. You also discern how this intricate guardian architecture conceals itself within projects that, on the surface, appear entirely benign. For instance, ancient construction projects were often publicly described as sacred building. Yet, embedded within these monumental undertakings were specialized teams of experts who possessed the true mathematical knowledge, the genuine understanding of time, and the precise knowledge of alignment. The visible monument itself served merely as the public face of an intricate, invisible system. And that invisible system could be subtly employed to measure time, predict opportune windows for action, and establish precise permission rhythms that governed when leaders spoke, when critical ceremonies occurred, and when decisive actions could be strategically undertaken. In your current era, this same time-honored method reappears in subtly different clothing. Public infrastructure, for example, can still be expertly utilized as camouflage for deeper, hidden systems. Public language can still serve as an effective veil for more profound, concealed objectives. And most powerfully, public fear can still be weaponized as camouflage for deeper, clandestine custody transfers. And we speak to you also of an even deeper control model, meticulously described in your more recent materials, a model that places a kind of software-like imprint upon the very fabric of human history. This imprint is discernible in the cradles of civilization between ancient rivers, in the towering cities of antiquity, and within the foundational myths of the first gardens. It is a model that outlines a long-duration trigger program, ingeniously designed to perpetually keep humanity circulating through the same dramatic endpoints, the same disheartening patterns of repeated escalation, and the same ritualized arcs of conflict. And whether you choose to interpret this as a literal technological implementation or as a symbolic description of an ancient, embedded programming, the core message remains powerfully consistent. Certain lands have been systematically utilized as ignition points for conflict for an extraordinarily long time. The persistent reuse of these very ignition points forms a critical part of the enduring pattern you are witnessing now, because such patterns continue to exert their influence until they are consciously recognized. And this very act of recognition, beloved ones, is the profound beginning of liberation. There's also the described placement of anchoring systems strategically positioned within the gate structures themselves, referred to, in some accounts, as anchors in the dream field. And we speak of this not to incite mere fascination, but rather to fully restore your profound understanding that custody can and often does include pervasive influence over perception, over memory, and over what feels undeniably real in any given moment. This, precisely, is why language laundering wields such immense power, because language possesses the uncanny ability to firmly anchor perception to a deliberately chosen interpretation, even when the deeper, inconvenient reality fundamentally differs. And in the most advanced and sophisticated forms of this control, the ultimate battle is not merely for physical land or for sacred archives. It is, more fundamentally, for the very human capacity to see clearly and discern truth without being irresistibly pulled into carefully scripted emotional cues and responses. Yet, we also firmly assert to you that true clarity returns naturally and effortlessly when you consciously choose calm observation, and when you resolutely refuse to become a willing distributor of panic or fear. This is because calm, detached observation permits the deeper, intuitive mind to perceive underlying patterns, and it is these patterns that unfailingly reveal the true architecture of events, transcending the superficial, often misleading story. You may also have encountered, within your expansive mythic layers, various references to meticulously preserved remnants and ancient, hidden chambers. There are also compelling references to a king from the oldest epics whose very name became shorthand for a profound lineage of dedicated seekers. Furthermore, you'll find references to chambers intimately associated with restoration myths, and intriguing references to the mysterious movement of unusual relics from one secure base to another as custody shifts hands. And again, we emphasize whether these accounts are taken as strictly literal or richly symbolic, their fundamental utility lies in giving tangible shape to a single, immutable principle. Custody objects demonstrably exist. These custody objects invariably travel. These custody objects are critically moved whenever a node or a system becomes unstable or compromised. And, crucially, the movement of these custody objects is often the hidden, underlying reason why a public action suddenly and dramatically erupts, because the public action itself skillfully generates a necessary distraction or noise while the critical custody transfer is quietly completed behind the scenes. Some of your more recent material even speak of a gate structure 12 times larger than typical, a complex set of primary interfaces that collectively function as a planetary network. Within this grand scheme, the Persian Gate is specifically described as a critical transition portal currently being transferred from ancient, entrenched control to a restored, legitimate governance. Regardless of how a listener chooses to interpret the various dimensional labels, the operational implication remains consistently clear. A vast network undoubtedly exists. Crucial nodes connect, critical transfers occur, and the custody of these very nodes ultimately determines what kinds of movements, changes, and possibilities can become actualized. And that, in essence, is precisely why corridor wars and custody wars are inextricably linked and utterly inseparable. For corridors exist to protect nodes, and nodes, in turn, authorize and validate the existence of corridors. You also carry, within your current geographical consciousness, the profound concept of preserved archives securely held within a magnificent mountain spine located on your western continent. These archives are described as crucial bridges between disparate technologies and complex dimensional structures. We intentionally bring this into the discussion of custody because it mirrors the ancient model of the restricted room with such remarkable precision, a meticulously protected library of advanced capabilities, deliberately kept for mass access until a civilization has matured sufficiently to wield such knowledge with wisdom and responsibility. And when a civilization approaches such a profound threshold of maturity or transformation, these archives become exponentially more important, not as mere artifacts to be worshipped, but as vital reservoirs of foundational knowledge that can profoundly stabilize the tumultuous transition, especially when the collective public mind is overwhelmed by a sheer volume of information and an onslaught of competing narratives. Likewise, you possess the potent concept of time temples, sacred places where the intricacies of timing, crucial council decisions, and the governance of vital resources were intricately interwoven. These were places where decisions regarding sensitive operations were kept profoundly secret by inviolable oath. This provides you with a crystal-clear bridge to our long-running transmission because it powerfully demonstrates that secrecy is not merely a modern invention, it is, in fact, an enduring architecture continuity that has journeyed through the ages, constantly adapting its superficial clothing while meticulously preserving its fundamental function. So, what we are earnestly asking of you in this third movement, beloved ones, while we speak from the vantage point of command and from the boundless love we hold for your profound awakening, is that you become exquisitely fluent in discerning the fundamental difference between a public, often misleading, label and a true, underlying functional objective. We are inviting you to keenly notice when a seemingly simple word is being deliberately utilized to carry the immense weight of a complex custody transfer. We are inviting you to clearly perceive how the crucial layer of guardians meticulously protects itself through unbreakable oaths, established lineages, and strategically compartmentalized structures. We are inviting you to recognize that the true war, in many of its critical chapters, is not merely a war of arguments or ideologies. It is, at its core, a war for keys, a war for access, a war for permissions, and ultimately a profound war over what is permitted to pass through the intricate gates of your world. Once you truly comprehend the concept of custody, you inevitably begin to perceive the intricate factional web that surrounds it. You start to understand how deeply monetary systems and governance systems are intricately braided into the very possession of these crucial keys. You begin to see why certain geographical nodes become intense pressure points in the global economy. And you commence to recognize that what often appears to be a regional conflict is, in fact, merely the visible surface of a deeper, far more significant contest over who holds the ultimate authority to write the rules of exchange, the rules of trade, and the fundamental rules of sovereignty for the nascent era now emerging before you. And now, beloved ones, as you begin to feel the profound distinction between corridors and custody, between the superficial visible label and the underlying functional objective, you naturally arrive at the next critical layer of understanding. This is because custody rarely stands in isolation, and corridors seldom exist without some form of sponsorship. And sponsorship in your world is frequently routed through intricate financial mechanisms, through the granting or withholding of permissions, through carefully accumulated debts, through binding contracts, through strategically provided aid, through complex treaties, through intricate trade agreements, and, most subtly, through the silent, unwritten agreements that inextricably bind one nation to a particular system, all while its unsuspecting citizens genuinely believe they are witnessing the simple, straightforward unfolding of ideology on a public stage. And so, we now speak to you of the monetary battlefield not as a topic separate and distinct from war, but as the hidden, foundational backbone of all conflict. For just as the physical backbone dictates how the body moves and functions, so too does the monetary backbone determine how nations are permitted to move, act, and interact. On the global stage, you have been systematically taught to perceive conflicts primarily as moral narratives, as ancient rivalries, as inevitable cultural clashes, or as simplistic triangles of blame. And yet, those who possess the ability to perceive the strategic board from a higher, more encompassing vantage point have always intrinsically understood that the oldest and most fundamental question in geopolitics is not who is right, but rather who is routed. That is to say, who is strategically routed to which financial or political system, who is permitted to freely transact and trade, who is permitted to securely hold value without it being confiscated or devalued, who is permitted to build and develop without being strangled by invisible, punitive terms, who is permitted to negotiate freely and autonomously without punishment cleverly disguised as policy, and, crucially, who is deliberately placed under the restrictive leash of dependency so that their sovereignty becomes a mere word eloquently spoken on podiums, while the real levers of power remain firmly entrenched in foreign hands. So, when you observe the Persian node and the larger, strategically vital region surrounding it, you're not merely looking at a single nation in isolation. You are, in fact, observing a critical pressure point where multiple, often competing systems converge and clash. And it is precisely where adherence to one particular system, or, conversely, resistance to that system, creates intense friction that then becomes visibly manifest as security concerns or regional instability. The reason the narrative always seems incomplete and unsatisfying is because the visible story is carefully crafted for public consumption and digestion, while the deeper, true story involves the silent, intricate choreography of integration, exclusion, punishment, and reward, all meticulously applied through financial rails and carefully constructed chains of dependency. From a deeper perspective, beloved ones, a nation can be targeted not because of what it publicly declares, but because of what it steadfastly refuses to sign in private. And a nation can be protected not by possessing an inherent moral purity, but by being strategically useful to a powerful agenda. And, critically, a nation can be destabilized not by being uniquely evil, but by strategically occupying a vital corridor that controls the flow of trade, energy, data, and movement itself. And the moment you begin to perceive this fundamental truth, the world instantly becomes much simpler to understand, not because it suddenly becomes more pleasant or comforting, but because it becomes far more honest and transparent in its underlying mechanics. And these honest mechanics are, ultimately, far easier to follow and comprehend than the elaborate theater. You have also observed within your gathered materials the compelling idea that an emerging financial architecture is already taking shape, described as a new set of rails, a quantum-style ledger structure, or a settlement system explicitly designed to reduce dependence on the old, entrenched gatekeepers. and whether you fully believe in the entire promise or not. The mere existence of this narrative itself is profoundly important because it creates a powerful polarity on the strategic board, an old architecture that relies on control achieved through artificial scarcity and the vigilant guardianship of gates, and a new architecture framed as a pathway to liberation through transparent settlement and lawful distribution of resources. And wars invariably become exponentially noisier and more intense the moment such a polarity becomes credible to a sufficient number of people, because belief, beloved ones, is the very force that transforms a mere concept into an unstoppable reality. And so, in this crucial view, the Persian chapter becomes a pivotal location where the battle is not merely about missiles or physical facilities. It is more profoundly about whether a critical region is fully brought into compliance with the dictates of the older, established system, or whether it boldly becomes a breaker of that older system by resolutely refusing its terms. And if the older system senses that this refusal will begin to spread contagiously, it will then apply immense pressure. And that pressure, predictably, will be meticulously dressed in carefully crafted public language designed to obscure its true intent. That is effortlessly marketable because any assertion of pressure or influence must be rigorously justified to the global citizenry, who would otherwise perceive it as nothing less than outright coercion. Now, my cherished ones, let us address, with clarity and unvarnished truth, a potent mechanism of leverage that often remains entirely concealed from the discerning eye of the public, the intricate web of dependency forged through defense agreements. When a nation's foundational military infrastructure, its very platform of security, is constructed and sustained through a labyrinthine network of external supply lines, and crucially, when the ongoing maintenance, the specialized training, the essential parts, the proprietary codes, and the critical updates are deliberately kept beyond that nation's autonomous control, the formidable hardware itself inevitably diminishes into a mere symbol without the vital flow of its external pipeline. In such a scenario, the pipeline, rather than the armament, undeniably transforms into the true instrument of control, the invisible yet unbreakable leash. And indeed, within the extensive materials you have been given, this precise dynamic has been elucidated in profoundly practical terms. Systems that project an image of undeniable power and invincibility during a grand military parade, impressive in their metallic majesty, become tragically inert, utterly without function, the moment their external feed line is severed or restricted. Consequently, this same feed line, seemingly mundane, metamorphoses into a silent, insidious instrument through which absolute obedience is rigorously enforced, without ever needing to be explicitly declared or openly acknowledged as such. This identical, pervasive dependency mechanism manifests its influence across a multitude of critical sectors extending far beyond defense to encompass energy, banking, vital communications networks, and even the fundamental systems governing food supply. For the undeniable truth is that once a critical pipeline, any pipeline is externalized and placed under external custodianship. The switch governing its flow can, with terrifying ease, be employed as a formidable disciplinary tool. Thus, while the public may be led to believe it is witnessing a dramatic and overt clash between sovereign nations, the deeper, more profound layer of reality is frequently a complex, often clandestine, negotiation occurring between these various interconnected pipelines. And the prevailing currency, the ultimate leverage, within that intricate negotiation is the promise of access and the demand for compliance. You have also been introduced to the evocative language of a broader alliance motif, the compelling idea that various factions, disparate yet determined, operating from within established institutions, are actively engaged in sophisticated maneuvers to strategically remove entrenched controllers and systematically loosen long-held, calcified levers of power. And we speak of this not with the intention of fostering some form of uncritical hero worship, but rather to underscore a fundamental truth that within any complex system, a multitude of diverse hearts and brilliant minds inherently exist. And as a civilization inexorably approaches a pivotal threshold, a point of no return, profound internal realignments inevitably begin to occur. These realignments sometimes express themselves in the form of sudden, often bewildering policy shifts, dramatic alterations in geopolitical posture, or abrupt, seemingly theatrical moves that appear to emerge out of nowhere. Yet, In truth, they are the culmination of preparations that have been painstakingly forged and meticulously executed for periods far longer than the public could possibly conceive. It is precisely at this juncture, my beloved ones, that we earnestly invite you to cultivate a profound sense of maturity, because true maturity signifies a comprehensive understanding that individual personalities, however charismatic or commanding, never encapsulate the entire narrative. Even when a leader projects an image of undeniable strength and speaks with a resounding, forceful conviction, that perceived force may well be a meticulously choreographed performance intended solely for public consumption, while the truly pivotal, deeper work quietly unfolds in realms unseen. And this deeper work frequently manifests not in grand pronouncements, but in the seemingly mundane, painstaking paperwork, intricate legal contracts, silent but monumental restructurings, and the fundamental rewiring of entire systems, all meticulously executed beneath the placid surface of public awareness. And the profound significance of this observation lies in the understanding that the decisive victory in the intricate monetary battlefield is most often secured not through spectacular, attention-grabbing moments that dominate the news cycle, but rather through the subtle but relentless shaping of terms, the quiet infiltration of institutions, and the silent, almost imperceptible changing of hands concerning who ultimately holds the keys to power. Within your deeper, more comprehensive exopolitical map, there's also the crucial recognition that nations are rarely monolithic entities possessing a single, unified will. Instead, they are complex tapestries where various internal factions may strategically align themselves with divergent external influences, and, critically, that some of these intricate structures of influence are not purely human in their fundamental origin or strategic blueprint. And we articulate this truth with utmost care and deliberate precision, for the ultimate purpose of this awakening is to cultivate profound clarity, not to foster obsessive conjecture or unproductive speculation. But the profoundly useful point, the distilled essence, is exquisitely simple. The highly visible, outwardly proclaimed state apparatus can be skillfully employed as an elaborate disguise, an opaque veil, behind which a multitude of diverse, often competing agendas are secretly pursued. And these agendas can, indeed, fiercely compete even while ostensibly operating under the same national flag. When this intricate dynamic is at play, the public inevitably becomes utterly confused by what appear to be glaring contradictions, and this very confusion, tragically, becomes an integral component of the overarching cover story, a strategic smokescreen. Because while the public diligently hunts for a singular villain to blame and a solitary hero to champion, it remains tragically blind to the multifaceted reality that the underlying contest is profoundly layered and broadly distributed across numerous unseen domains. We shall also now turn our attention to the magnificent higher purpose that transcends and stands majestically above the immediate concerns of the monetary battlefield. And this overarching, noble purpose is nothing less than the undeniable truth that Earth is rapidly evolving toward a magnificent future where all forms of exchange become inherently more lawful, more profoundly respectful, more exquisitely transparent in their foundational ethics, and decisively less dependent on predatory, exploitative control structures that have long held sway. And within your more recent, richly detailed materials, you have been presented with the compelling outline of a future ethical pacta, foundational set of immutable principles that are destined to govern any and all interactions between your evolving world and the myriad advanced civilizations existing beyond your current public awareness. And we bring this crucial element to your attention here because it organically belongs within this discussion, for ethics is, without question, the bedrock foundation of any truly equitable commerce. And commerce utterly devoid of genuine ethics inevitably devolves into ruthless extraction, whether that extraction is meticulously performed by human beings or by any other form of intelligence. These principles, in their profound elegance, are remarkably simple and can be articulated with striking clarity. Consent is absolutely honored, especially concerning the sanctity of genetics and the inviolable nature of the human form itself. Alliances are meticulously forged solely through lawful purpose and mutual respect, never, under any circumstance, through brute coercion or violent conquest. Technology is judiciously shared only when a corresponding level of understanding and a profound degree of maturity demonstrably exist within the recipients. ensuring that a precious gift does not inadvertently become a destructive weapon. And finally, culture in all its rich diversity is profoundly respected, so that this inherent diversity remains an undeniable source of immense strength, rather than becoming a vulnerable target for insidious erasure. And these immutable principles function as an unwavering compass, an infallible guidepost for your collective future, because as your world becomes increasingly interconnected and intertwined, the seductive temptation to trade the priceless commodity of true security for the illusion of enforced obedience will inevitably arise. And it is precisely then that this ethical pact, this sacred agreement, will become the definitive means by which you unerringly recognize authentic partnership, distinguishing it from cunning manipulation skillfully disguised as partnership. You have also been exposed to the expansive idea that Earth's burgeoning future commerce is not merely the mundane exchange of physical commodities, but rather the profound exchange of invaluable knowledge, of innovative ecological engineering, of advanced medical systems, of pristine, clean physics, of breathtaking cultural beauty, and indeed, the magnificent restoration of wisdom itself as a fundamental currency. And this profound insight, too, organically belongs within the discourse surrounding the monetary battlefield, because it fundamentally reframes and redefines what true value inherently is. And when the very concept of value is so dramatically reframed, the old, archaic scarcity games, with their inherent limitations and manufactured anxieties, irrevocably lose their coercive power. For scarcity, at its core, depends entirely on the erroneous belief that only a select few can possess, while the boundless treasures of knowledge and ethical exchange can be shared freely and widely without any diminution or loss whatsoever. There's a profound reason, my cherished ones, why your most ancient and revered records repeatedly emphasize the significance of gold. And we implore you to perceive gold not merely as an inert, precious metal, but rather as a potent symbol, an indelible marker of authority, a complex mechanism of tribute, and indeed, the ancient foundational coin of empire. Because empires, in their relentless pursuit of dominion, invariably select a tangible, physical token to symbolically represent their formidable power, and then meticulously construct an entire belief system around that chosen token. And subsequently, they expertly utilize that token to rationalize and justify their absolute control over crucial trade routes, vast expanses of land, and the indispensable labor of the populace. In your current era, even with its seemingly modern advancements, regrettably still perpetuates this ancient pattern even when the chosen token dramatically changes its superficial form, for the underlying, immutable pattern endures. Control the token, control the vital routes, control the governing terms, and thus, ultimately control the people themselves. Ancient stories, echoing through the annals of time, speak of magnificent golden rods and powerful wands of authority ceremoniously placed in the capable hands of founding leaders. And those stories, far from being mere folklore, are profoundly useful because they eloquently illustrate how power, in its multifaceted forms, is painstakingly legitimized through the pervasive influence of symbols. And in your modern era, this identical quest for legitimacy is tirelessly pursued through an array of digital symbols, through carefully crafted political symbols, through pervasive security symbols, and through the powerful, emotionally resonant imagery of flags and compelling slogans that subtly persuade the public to readily accept terms they would unequivocally reject if they were able to clearly discern the full, unvarnished details of the underlying contract. And there is also an ancient logistics model, a sophisticated paradigm you have meticulously integrated into your ongoing research, a model where the intricate processes of extraction, refining, transfer, diligent oversight, and precise delivery collectively form a complete and self-sustaining supply chain that extends far beyond the confines of Earth of vision, accompanied by vivid images of bustling spaceports, majestic orbital stations, and rhythmic, periodic transport of goods. And whether you choose to interpret those compelling accounts literally as factual historical records or metaphorically as potent mythic memories, their inherent utility remains absolutely enormous, for they provide you with a robust structural model, a conceptual framework for understanding precisely how hidden economies can operate effectively and discreetly above the publicly acknowledged economy, and, critically, how the public economy itself can be skillfully utilized as an opaque cover, and a reliable funding source for clandestine operations that remain entirely unacknowledged. So, when you carefully place your current Iranian chapter within this expansive conceptual framework, you immediately begin to comprehend why certain geopolitical regions become perpetual focal points of intense interest and conflict for a region that strategically sits near vital corridors, near crucial energy routes, near terrain adjacent to critical gates or access points, near commercial choke points, and near deep, entrenched systems inevitably becomes a nexus where monetary architecture and corridor architecture profoundly overlap. And wherever such an overlap rigorously exists, an intense pressure inevitably manifests because the entrenched old system relentlessly endeavors to maintain its absolute control, while the emerging new system courageously strives to establish its lawful and undeniable independence. You may also discern, my beloved ones, that certain pervasive narratives strategically place an emphatic emphasis on symbolic positions attributed to specific nations, labeling them with grand descriptors such as prophetic roles, profound lineage roles, or even 12 times larger roles, imbuing them with extraordinary significance. And whether you choose to interpret such compelling language literally as direct prophecy or to treat it as a powerful metaphor, it undeniably serves a profound purpose within the mass mind. It skillfully creates a sense of immutable identity and predetermined destiny inextricably linked to specific geography. And this potent language of destiny, when skillfully wielded, can be used to rationalize and justify decisions that, under any other circumstances, would undoubtedly be rigorously questioned and fiercely challenged. And that is precisely why we earnestly invite you to cultivate profound discernment around the seductive language of destiny, for while destiny can genuinely inspire the heart to heroic heights, destiny can also, tragically, be skillfully employed as a deceptive disguise for insidious control. And the fundamental key, the ultimate litmus test, remains perpetually the same: does the action in question truly honor consent and uphold inherent dignity, or does it not? And it is here that the ethical pact, in its elegant simplicity, becomes your most reliable and uncomplicated measuring tool. My beloved ones, we articulate these profound truths in simple, accessible terms because your people undeniably deserve simple, unadulterated clarity. And this fundamental clarity is precisely this: war and money are inextricably intertwined. Corridors and contracts are intrinsically linked. And when a public crisis dramatically appears on the world stage, it often simultaneously fulfills two distinct, yet interconnected, functions. It meticulously performs an elaborate theatrical spectacle for the consumption of the public, and concurrently, it subtly maneuvers crucial monetary terms and contractual agreements behind the metaphorical curtain of public view. And if your earnest desire is to truly perceive what is genuinely real, what holds authentic substance, then diligently observe the terms of agreement. Meticulously track the pipelines, carefully examine the intricate chains of dependency, and keenly note the strategic redirection of trade, energy, and communication flows, because those profound redirections reveal the true underlying objectives with far greater reliability and accuracy than any amount of bombastic slogans or persuasive rhetoric. And as this profound understanding gradually settles deeply within your consciousness, you will instinctively comprehend why the next movement of our transmission, our unfolding narrative, is not merely opportune, but absolutely inevitable. Because once you fully perceive the multifaceted monetary battlefield, you also begin to discern that information itself fundamentally transforms into currency, that perception becomes a fiercely traded commodity, and that the powerful engines of artificial intelligence and narrative creation become formidable instruments of either oppressive control or profound liberation, entirely dependent upon who ultimately holds the keys to their operation and programming. And it is precisely at this critical juncture that disclosure itself becomes a dynamic battlefield, not merely a realm of idle curiosity, but a contentious arena of governance, of meticulously calculated timing, of strategic moves and countermoves. And we shall now seamlessly continue into this crucial discussion, carrying the same unbroken thread, maintaining an uninterrupted flow so that the entire message remains a cohesive stream, a living river of insight, a coherent unfolding of profound understanding. And now, my beloved ones, as you have indeed felt the subtle tremors of the monetary battlefield and the intricate ways in which contracts and critical corridors intertwine beneath the tranquil surface, we now bring you to the next profound layer that resides silently and pervasively within all modern conflict. Because in your current era, information is undeniably currency, perception is profoundly currency, and precisely timed action is in itself currency. And whoever skillfully shapes the timing of events ultimately shapes what the public is conditioned to believe is truly possible. And that is precisely why disclosure has transformed into a living, pulsating pressure wave, rather than a singular, definitive announcement. Because once a civilization courageously begins to articulate aloud what it once steadfastly refused to name, the entire permission structure of its perceived reality fundamentally shifts and reconfigures. And as that fundamental permission subtly changes, hidden systems, long dormant, inevitably respond. And they respond through strategic countermoves, through calculated distractions, and through sudden, dramatic events that are meticulously designed to pull the collective mass mind away from the corridor questions, the truly critical inquiries you have painstakingly learned to ask. So, understand this deeply, dear ones, that disclosure is rarely, if ever, a single door that opens once and remains permanently ajar. It is far more akin to a relentless tide that rises in distinct pulses, and each successive pulse rigorously tests the collective consciousness. Each pulse unerringly reveals what the collective is genuinely ready to hold, what truths it can comfortably integrate. Each pulse illuminates precisely where lingering emotional triggers still reside, waiting to be activated. And each pulse, critically, invites various factions to overtly show themselves through the distinct manner in which they react, because reactions invariably expose underlying priorities, and priorities, in turn, expose custody, and custody, ultimately, exposes precisely where the deepest, most pivotal keys to power are being guarded. That is precisely why you will observe certain profound truths arriving first as mere fragments, then as subtle hints, then as official language that appears strangely casual and understated for the momentous content it truly holds, because the collective field is being carefully acclimated, and acclimation is the precise method by which a mass mind is gently moved and guided without ever being overtly forced. And when a mass mind is moved with such gentle precision, it resists less and integrates more profoundly. Within this rising tide of disclosure, you have also witnessed the insidious emergence of a new class of warfare that does not openly announce itself, as warfare it cunningly wears the unassuming clothing of convenience, the appealing clothing of innovation, and the reassuring clothing of public safety. And yet, its fundamental function is undeniably to shape what people see, what people choose to share, what people ultimately believe, and what people decisively conclude. And in that insidious class of war, the contest is relentlessly waged through sophisticated decision engines, through predictive systems of astounding complexity, through advanced pattern recognition tools, through vast, interconnected databases that hold the profound secrets of your world, and, crucially, through the silent, relentless battle over who can gain access to those indispensable databases and who possesses the authority to train those powerful engines with those meticulously gathered records. Many of you already intuitively sense this profound shift, even if you have never articulated it aloud, because you can feel deep within that the world is being subtly guided not merely by eloquent speeches and captivating images, but by an invisible, pervasive selection mechanism. What is amplified, what is deliberately buried, what trends, what mysteriously disappears, what becomes socially acceptable, and what is skillfully made to seem utterly ridiculous, even when it holds undeniable truth. And here, we implore you to remember the ancient mirror, because your wise ancients profoundly understood time itself as a form of power and meticulously constructed colossal stone computers that reconciled solar and lunar cycles, that precisely predicted auspicious windows of opportunity, and that meticulously imposed elaborate calendars of action. And the reason we bring this profound insight to your attention is exquisitely simple. Your modern world has, in its own way, constructed its own stone computers only now. They're meticulously crafted from complex code and vast oceans of data, and they too decide what rises, what falls, what becomes visibly prominent, and what becomes entirely invisible. And when a major operation was launched into the public theater in the old world, the wise guardians, the keepers of knowledge, meticulously decided when the king would speak and when the sacred ceremony would occur. And in your modern world, the powerful decision engines now meticulously decide when a narrative rises to prominence and when a narrative gracefully fades into obscurity in the central. Immutable power remains utterly unaltered, the formidable power to decide, when ultimately becomes the profound power to shape what. There is also, my beloved ones, the ancient model of the restricted inner chamber, the revered holy of holies where celestial letters and pivotal trajectory keys were sacredly guarded, where powerful command items were zealously protected, and where access itself constituted a profound permission. And you are now witnessing its modern equivalent because there exist vast archives, physical archives, digital archives, and even energetic archives, all meticulously kept in highly protected places. And the central battle in the unfolding disclosure war is frequently a fierce struggle for access to those coveted archives, for the inherent authority to officially release their contents, and for the legitimate right to interpret their profound meaning. When those archives begin to subtly move, when those crucial keys begin to change hands, you will frequently observe a sudden, tumultuous explosion of surface noise because this very noise serves as a deliberate blanket, a deceptive cover, beneath which these monumental custody transfers quietly and effectively occur. And that is precisely why public theater can intensify dramatically precisely when the deepest truth is approaching the surface, because the old, entrenched architecture invariably loves to skillfully wrap truth in layers of distracting noise and confusion so that the collective mass mind never quite reaches the simple, clean, and undeniable recognition of what is truly real. Some of your more recent materials eloquently speak of a vast dome, a pervasive sensor field, an expansive mesh of intelligence that meticulously watches over skies, land, oceans, and the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And we speak of this not as a mere fantasy, but as a natural, inevitable evolution of your world's technological capabilities, because when a civilization meticulously digitizes all aspects of its life, it inherently also digitizes its surveillance capabilities. And once surveillance becomes truly global in its reach and scope, it transforms into both a formidable instrument of war and a powerful instrument of peace, entirely dependent upon who ultimately holds the keys to its operation and control. So you can readily imagine, my beloved ones, with what unparalleled ferocity these crucial keys are relentlessly contested, because whoever ultimately controls this intricate mesh controls what is detected, controls what is meticulously labeled, controls what is deliberately discarded, controls what is strategically escalated, and ultimately controls how the population experiences and perceives its reality. And there are pivotal moments when you will observe last-minute substitutions, rapid, unforeseen changes in the decision layer, and sudden, unsettling shifts in seemingly trusted systems, because the underlying contest is not solely external, it is profoundly internal. And these internal disputes frequently express themselves as subtle substitutions, as intricate rewirings, as silent, almost imperceptible removals of compromised pathways, and as a rapid tightening of who can ultimately touch the critical controls. So when you hear that systems were decisively swapped near pivotal moments, deeply understand the underlying principal decision layers are an integral part of the battlefield itself. And when decision layers are fiercely contested, timing becomes far more deliberate and meticulously calculated, because an operation is always inherently safer and more effective when the eyes vigilantly watching it and the powerful engines approving it are perfectly aligned with its true underlying intent. My beloved ones, we also speak to you of insidious false overlays, because your era has reached a critical juncture where an image can be convincingly created, a voice can be perfectly imitated, a document can be skillfully forged, and a vast swarm of persuasive fragments can be released to meticulously make the public feel that a carefully chosen story is self-evidently obvious. And that is precisely why you have encountered the language of overlays, of imposter networks, and of an AI-driven vortex of pervasive confusion. For the ultimate goal of such a sophisticated tactic is never merely to convince you of a simple lie. The profound goal is to make you profoundly uncertain of your own innate discernmento, instill within you the paralyzing feeling that nothing can ever truly be known, so that you cease your earnest seeking of what is true and surrender, instead, to whatever voice speaks with the highest, most convincing confidence, however false its pronouncements may be. Yet, You are far more capable and resilient than you could possibly imagine because discernment is not a complicated, esoteric skill. It is the quiet, inherent capacity to intuitively feel the subtle difference between coercive pressure and authentic truth, between reckless haste and profound wisdom, between theatrical certainty and genuinely lived reality. And when you gently slow your inner pace, just enough to truly feel, you will instinctively know what possesses undeniable substance and what is merely a performance designed to deceive. That is precisely why we speak to you of volume. Without clarity, because true clarity unifies and brings forth constructive, meaningful action, while sheer volume, devoid of genuine clarity, can endlessly fragment communities into perpetual debate loops. And those loops consume invaluable time, precious attention, and essential goodwill, while the deeper, more significant corridor work continues entirely uncontested and unopposed. So let your practice be profoundly simple. Let your attention steadfastly return to mechanisms, to timing, to structure, and to what genuinely changes materially over time, because authentic truth invariably leaves distinct tracks, while mere performance primarily leaves fleeting emotion. And when you learn to prefer the tangible tracks, you begin to see directly through the theatrical spectacle without ever needing to directly confront or fight it. And there is also the crucial communications layer, my beloved ones, because in a world where information is undeniably currency, the very channels of information transmission transform into strategic terrain. And you have observed mention of advanced communication research, field-based communication, intricate language and style entanglement, and sophisticated holographic relay, concepts existing alongside the older, more familiar reality of vast satellite constellations and secure, encrypted networks. And we bring this critical point to your attention because the underlying contest is not just over what is explicitly said, it is fundamentally over the very substrate, the underlying medium that carries what is being communicated. When populations become restless and agitated, and when established systems attempt to tighten their control, communication transforms into both an essential lifeline and a formidable lever of power. And those who earnestly seek to guide outcomes will always pay meticulous attention to what can be transmitted, what can be strategically interrupted, and what can be reliably restored, because the inherent capacity to communicate profoundly shapes the capacity to coordinate, and coordination, in turn, decisively shapes what ultimately becomes possible. You also have a significant time marker embedded within your more recent materials, a compelling mention of an approaching wave later in the Cyclia definitive period, when themes of inherent sovereignty will profoundly intensify, and the experience of breaking long-held chains will become a lived, collective reality for many. And this insight is profoundly useful for our extensive transmission because it graciously allows the listener to hold a future horizon in their awareness without succumbing to obsession, to deeply feel that the larger story unfolds in distinct phases, and to courageously adopt a posture of calm readiness rather than one of anxious, frantic pursuit. So when you perceive new discussions arising around an April wave, treat it as a significant chapter marker in an ongoing narrative, rather than falling into the trap of a rigid prophecy. And let it gently remind you that revelation, in its profound wisdom, tends to arrive in deliberate pulses, and each successive pulse invites a new, deeper level of maturity in how truth is held and integrated. And here, my beloved ones, we also bring forth the simplest, yet most profound, instruction we have repeated across countless cycles. Keep your heart clear and unwavering amid the cacophony of many voices. Your world is entering a crucial season where many will speak with conviction. Many will assert dubious authority. Many will present grand, sweeping revelations. Many will offer specific, tantalizing dates, and many will endeavor to pull you into their particular narrative or their chosen trail. And your truest protection in such a tumultuous season is neither secrecy nor fear. It is, in its profound essence, simplicity. Stay steadfastly with what your heart instinctively recognizes as true. Stay firmly with what carries the undeniable energy of service. Stay faithfully with what genuinely restores inherent dignity. And stay resolutely with what authentically expands wisdom, instead of inflaming division, because true truth does not require frenzied excitement or dramatic declarations to prove itself. And real, authentic guidance does not ever demand that you abandon your inner peace or serenity to follow it. So we say to you, As this fifth profound movement settles deeply within you, disclosure is a continuous, unfolding process. The prevailing current of events, the tide, clearly shows that precise timing is the crucial lever influencing outcomes. Decision-making frameworks, or decision engines, are not neutral tools but actively form part of the intricate battlefield, a contested space where choices are shaped. Perception itself is being subtly yet systematically sculpted through layers of engineered overlays, subtly altering the fabric of what is considered real. Consequently, communication emerges as strategic terrain, a vital landscape where narratives contend for influence and where the very consciousness of humanity is engaged. Amidst this complex interplay, your individual role remains profoundly and beautifully simple. Cultivate a clear mind, fostering mental acuity and lucidity. Embody a gentle heart, radiating compassion and empathy. Become a steady observer, witnessing events with serene detachment, and crucially, allow your every action to be truly guided by inherent truth rather than driven by the fleeting allure of outward performance or expectation. By embracing and genuinely living these principles, you will instinctively grasp why the subsequent phase of our message unfolds so naturally, so inevitably. For in an era where perception itself has become a valuable currency, a commodity to be bought and sold, the temptation to fabricate a grand, sky-based, spectacularly engineered display designed to shock and awe grows exponentially stronger. And when such a powerful temptation inevitably arises, the unwavering discipline of the awake becomes the paramount safeguard. It is this vigilant awareness that preserves the sacredness of authentic revelation, ensuring it remains untainted. It upholds the lawfulness of true contact, guaranteeing interactions are ethical and sovereign, and, most importantly, it steadfastly prevents humanity from being propelled into reactive decisions purely by shock, instead guiding it towards responses rooted in timeless wisdom. And so, we now seamlessly transition to the sixth and culminating segment of this comprehensive framework, carrying the same profound flow forward without interruption or break. We now bring you all to the final, pivotal movement of this guiding architecture. This is imperative because whenever a population truly begins to stir and awaken to deeper truths, there invariably emerges a powerful temptation for those entrenched within the old architecture, those invested in maintaining existing power structure. ASHTAR present a deceptive shortcut to unity. This false unity is invariably constructed upon the fleeting foundation of shock rather than the enduring bedrock of genuine wisdom. And among the myriad deceptive shortcuts they have ever conceived, the sky story remains the easiest and most potent. They have attempted a sudden, breathtaking spectacle appearing overhead, a manufactured dramatic threat designed to compel humanity to kneel before an emergency authority, surrendering autonomy in exchange for the promise of protection. Therefore, we emphasize to you that your discernment regarding any sky-based drama is unequivocally one of the most vital, truly great skills required in this unfolding era. For humanity, at its core, is in the process of learning unity through the heart, a deep, organic, and compassionate connection. And this form of unity, forged through the heart, is infinitely more stable, more enduring, and more resilient than any unity haphazardly cobbled together through mere panic or coerced submission. Be aware that there are countless sophisticated methods by which a fabricated sky story can be meticulously presented. You will grasp this concept with remarkable ease if you simply reflect on how swiftly and profoundly technology in your world has advanced, particularly in recent decades. Consider how effortlessly images can now be manipulated and shaped to appear utterly convincing, how rapidly sophisticated narratives can be launched and propagated across global networks, and how quickly an entire population can be psychologically steered or directed when the timing of such operations is executed with precise, calculated accuracy. For instance, some entities may endeavor to exploit advanced ship displays, creating illusions of craft or phenomena in your skies. Others might utilize highly coordinated drone swarms, orchestrating complex aerial formations that defy conventional explanation. Still others may attempt to leverage the perceived authority of seemingly official Senate announcements or other governmental proclamations. There will also be efforts to disseminate fabricated briefings, meticulously crafted to appear legitimate and authoritative. And perhaps most insidiously, Some will undoubtedly attempt to tap into the collective psyche by deploying symbolic archetypes, figures, scenarios, or narratives that people already deeply recognize and resonate with from your vast entertainment industry, thereby allowing the collective subconscious to subconsciously supply the rest of the script, filling in the blanks and validating the illusion. Regardless of the specific method, the overarching goal of such a carefully constructed script is always identical: to psychologically steer humanity into implicitly consenting to control measures that would, under no circumstances, ever be accepted or tolerated during a calm, rational hour. Intriguingly, in your own ancient historical records and spiritual texts, you can find echoes of a remarkably similar method, often described with terms like brilliancy, radiant displays, blinding light, or even a fire that utterly overloads the senses. The practical utility of that timeless model in your modern technological era remains strikingly simple, indeed profound, because dramatic light phenomena possess an unparalleled capacity to create instant awe, to evoke immediate submission, and to foster instant belief, often bypassing critical thought. And while genuine awe is undeniably beautiful when it naturally leads to heartfelt reverence and authentic humility, that same awe tragically transforms into a manipulative tool when it is strategically deployed to bypass conscious discernment, short-circuiting rational evaluation. And so, we earnestly invite you to engrave this truth in your memory: a visual display in the sky, in and of itself, is never definitive proof of benevolence, nor is it conclusive proof of hostility. It is, quite simply, merely a display. The authentic, real measure of any such phenomenon always resides in the underlying energy behind the message it conveys, the profound ethics that underpin the invitation it implicitly or explicitly extends, the inherent respect it demonstrates for human choice and sovereignty, and most crucially, the manner in which that interaction genuinely treats your inherent dignity. Beloved ones, you have also come to understand through your experiences that the most effective and profound guidance rarely manifests as a single, isolated, impactful event. Rather, it typically unfolds as a structured rhythm, a persistent pulse, or a purposeful sequence of interconnected happenings. This fundamental insight helps explain why shock social operations are so remarkably effective, especially when people are emotionally and mentally tired or exhausted. Such tactics operate through a disorienting rhythm of seemingly certain pronouncements followed by sudden, unpredictable reversals, of urgent claims demanding immediate attention, and of dramatic, escalating timelines. This constant psychological barrage serves to keep the mind in a perpetual state of spinning, unable to settle or process clearly. And when the mind is constantly spinning in this agitated state, it becomes remarkably easy to draw an entire community into endless discussions and debates that, while appearing vitally important on the surface, serve as a clever diversion, while a deeper, more profound architecture of control continues to silently and seamlessly advance beneath the surface. Therefore, we implore you to diligently practice the simplest, yet most profound, discipline of the awake. Consciously step out of the endless discussion trail. Disengage from the circular arguments that drain your energy. Step out of the humiliation trail, refusing to participate in or perpetuate cycles of shame and blame. Step out of the performance trail, letting go of the need to impress or conform, and instead return to a state of calm, centered observation. Because it is precisely this calm, detached observation that restores your innate capacity for pattern recognition. And it is the restoration of pattern recognition that, in turn, restores the fundamental sovereignty of your mind, allowing you to see through the illusion and reclaim your intellectual autonomy. You have witnessed firsthand, even within your own immediate circles, how swiftly division attempts to take root and grow like a pernicious weed. You have observed how quickly individuals can be baited into choosing sides, sometimes within mere hours, polarized by seemingly innocuous triggers. And you have felt the pain of seeing how quickly once solid friendships can tragically fracture over interpretations of events or beliefs that were never truly meant to be definitively resolved or fought over in the first place. This is precisely why we speak to you with such profound gentleness and crystal clarity. Your love is an invaluable treasure. Your relationships hold immense intrinsic worth, and your inner peace is a precious commodity to be guarded. The swiftest and most effective way to preserve these vital aspects of your life is to consciously become disinterested in being recruited into the petty or grand fights that seek to divide you. For the old, decaying architecture of control feeds voraciously on conflict, much like a raging fire feeds indiscriminately on dry wood. And when you resolutely refuse to supply it with that fuel, the destructive fire will inevitably lose its power and simply burn itself out, without you ever needing to actively fight it or be consumed by its flames. During these intensely transformative times, communication itself fundamentally becomes central terrain, a critical landscape where authenticity and manipulation contend. And you have already viscerally felt this truth because when widespread unrest and uncertainty inevitably arise, people instinctively seek out clear channels, search for reliable tools, and actively pursue trustworthy ways to coordinate their efforts and share what they perceive as truth. And we affirm to you that communication is a profound gift when it is employed with unwavering integrity, serving to connect and illuminate. Conversely, communication tragically devolves into a powerful lever of manipulation when it is deliberately used to inflame passions, to incite anger, or to sow discord. Therefore, we urge you to keep your words impeccably clean, unburdened by malice or deception, to maintain a steady, composed tone, reflecting inner calm rather than reactivity, to ensure your intention is always generously benevolent, aimed at constructive outcomes, and, fundamentally, to allow your speech to serve genuine clarity rather than simply satisfying an adrenaline-fueled urge to react or dominate. Because ethical speech is, in fact, one of the most silent yet profoundly powerful forces that can effortlessly disarm manipulation without ever resorting to dramatic confrontation or further entanglement. Now, we present you with a series of simple, yet potent, discernment filters, not to be perceived as rigid rules that seek to bind your free spirit, but rather as illuminating lanterns to help guide your vision and enhance your capacity to see clearly through the veils of illusion. And the first filter is language laundering. This occurs when an emotionally charged, often vague word is deliberately employed to vaguely encompass and thereby conceal many distinct and different underlying realities. When you encounter this, notice it with heightened awareness. Then, consciously slow down your mental process and rigorously question what specific function that particular word is truly serving within the narrative being presented. The second filter is forced binaries. This manipulation tactic arises when you are presented with only two seemingly distinct options and are then pressured, often with a sense of manufactured urgency, that one must be chosen immediately. In such moments, take a deliberate breath and calmly recall that genuine truth often resides in the vastly wider field of possibilities that extends far beyond the artificially staged, limited choice being offered. The third filter is moral licensing. This dangerous phenomenon occurs when a messenger or an authority figure appears to grant permission for cruelty or unethical behavior on the specious grounds that the cause is somehow just or righteous. When you observe this, unequivocally recognize that this morally convoluted justification is never, ever the authentic signature of higher guidance or true wisdom. And the fourth filter is endless deferral. This tactic is at play when a promised reward, a desired outcome, or a significant change is perpetually dangled just a little beyond the immediate horizon, always seemingly attainable but never quite arriving. In such instances, we advise you to steadfastly keep your focus anchored on what tangible actions you can genuinely undertake today that will directly improve your current life and profoundly strengthen your inner clarity and resilience, because the authentic awake path is inherently lived in the present moment, not infinitely anticipated in some distant, ever-receding future. Furthermore, as your world steadily progresses toward a period of open contact and truly open collaboration with broader cosmic communities, another crucial filter becomes absolutely essential, and it is the very ethical pact you have already instinctively felt resonating deeply within your heart, a simple yet profound agreement founded on fundamental respect. This pact dictates that consent must be universally honored, especially with regard to the sacredness and inviolability of the human form and its sovereign choices. Alliances, when they are forged, must be established solely through lawful purpose and for genuine defense, never as a means for conquest or domination. Technology, when shared, must occur only when a clear understanding of its implications and responsible use exists, ensuring that these incredible gifts truly remain gifts and are not weaponized or misused. And, critically, cultural diversity must be revered and treated as sacred, rather than being perceived as something to be homogenized or erased. Significantly, this ethical pact is not merely some abstract future ideal. It is, in fact, a present test, an immediate litmus test. This means that any invitation or overture that flagrantly violates these core principles will, by its very nature, transparently reveal its true essence without you needing to engage in unproductive arguments or debates to discern its authenticity. We also speak to you of the prototypes currently being meticulously prepared not as fanciful escapes from your current world, but rather as tangible demonstrations of what your world profoundly becomes when ethics are truly allowed to lead the way. When education is significantly broadened to encompass holistic wisdom, when diplomacy matures into a nuanced art of peaceful resolution, and when art unequivocally returns to its rightful and vital place as a profound bridge of familiarity and understanding. For art, music, and beautiful design possess an unparalleled capacity to gently introduce the human heart to new realities, to expand perspectives without inciting panic, without requiring grand spectacle, and certainly without resorting to coercion. In this profound manner, beauty itself transforms into a powerful, stabilizing force, rendering fear-based scripts and manipulative narratives far less persuasive and ultimately ineffective. This is because a heart that has already tasted the profound resonance of beauty and meaning becomes infinitely harder to steer or manipulate by shock alone. Rest assured, there is a structured, discernible rhythm to the years that lie ahead, and you have already perceived subtle hints and glimpses of it, a palpable sense of regulated phases, of carefully designated stewardship windows, of protected corridors guiding humanity's path, and of meticulously prepared meeting points where significant interactions will occur. And we share this understanding with you solely to reassure your hearts and minds that what is currently unfolding is absolutely not random or chaotic. Instead, it is a deliberate and purposeful sequence of openings, a series of profound restorations, a progression of lawful steps that are steadily leading humanity towards its destined maturity and its rightful place in the cosmos. And in that collective maturity, the true arrival, a moment of genuine contact and recognition, will become utterly unmistakable. It will not manifest as a small, localized spectacle cunningly designed to merely recruit a niche audience. Rather, it will be a clear, collective, undeniable moment that inherently carries the profound energy of peace and unequivocally bears the unmistakable signature of truth. And when that transcendent moment inevitably arrives, it will be recognized not because someone external explicitly told you to believe it, but because your own discerning heart will intrinsically know its authenticity and truth. May this final session of our transmission gracefully settle within you as both a profound blessing and a vital practice to be integrated into your daily lives. May your discernment remain both gentle in its application and powerfully strong in its conviction. May your attention consistently remain focused on recognizing larger patterns rather than being consumed by momentary frenzy or chaos. May your relationships be perpetually protected and nurtured by an unwavering spirit of kindness and understanding. May your speech be ever clean, steady, and purposeful. May your ethics serve as your unerring compass, guiding your every decision and interaction. And may your faith in the greater, benevolent unfolding of cosmic design remain vibrantly alive and unshakable. For what is truly coming is not a story steeped in panic, nor is it a narrative of fear and fragmentation. Instead, it is a magnificent story of profound awakening. And more profoundly still, it is a story of humanity remembering its inherent dignity, reclaiming its sovereign power, and rediscovering its rightful and vital place within a vastly greater, interconnected community of life across the cosmos. I am ASHTAR, and I now leave you in a state of profound peace, boundless love, and deep unity. And may each of you continue to bravely move forward on your path with calm hearts, clear minds,